One world currency.
The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition of the Down the Rabbit Hole broadcast here on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Tonight, I have a special guest. It is June 8th, 2012. Does anybody know what today is? Let me remind you. Today is the anniversary of the attack on the U.S.S. Liberty, a United States naval vessel, by its so-called ally, Israel. And this attack on the ship has gone down in official history, and I'm doing air quotes, as an accident, a mistake, which, believe me, is hard to believe if you understand how professional militaries really are when it comes to doing things. And the level of the attack was not a mistake. We're going to get into a lot of that. But rather than me do a show where I sit and rant about the Liberty for 2 hours and just give you facts and stuff, I have something better than that. Tonight, I have with me a very special guest, Richard Weaver, a survivor of that attack, a crew member of the U.S.S. Liberty, a man who has not been able to get his voice out thoroughly until recently, and I hope that I can do him some justice tonight by giving him the airtime to speak his story. And I hope others will pick up take the mantle from me and the other radio hosts like Bob Tuskin and Joyce Riley over at the Power Hour and a couple other people that have interviewed him. And I hope they will run with it and interview him and get his story out there. It doesn't have to be just on the anniversary of the Liberty, folks. Okay? His story and their story needs to be told. Israel needs to be held to account. Our government needs to be held to account. And the general public needs to know what really happened. So without further ado, I want to bring to the show and welcome Mr. Richard Larry Weaver, survivor of the U.S.S. Liberty. Richard, welcome to the show, my brother.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So let's start with the attack. I'm going to give you the floor, and I want you to go ahead and just start with the beginning. You guys started getting strafed by the Israeli warplanes, so go ahead.
Well, it's very important that I start of me being on the 8 to 12 in the morning watch, because this is very powerful evidence that they knew who we were. I was on the 8 to 12 morning watch on the Liberty, and I was up on the bow, and it was the last, excuse me, I'm trying to get over something here. It was the last part of my watch, the last hour of it. And anyway, I saw either 3 or 4 high-speed jets circling the Liberty in a big circle at a high rate of speed, and they were really high, and then they buzzed off, and then flying what we call, nickname a boxcar. It's a very weird-looking plane, but it looks like a box. That plane was about half of the elevation, the height of the jets. I don't know if they had any cameras. I don't know if they had any powerful binoculars or anything aboard that they could, read the U.S.S. Liberty name or AGTR-5 on the bow or whatever, recognize it as an American ship. But I think if you had a good pair of binoculars, the altitude they surely could have saw the American flag flying at the top of the mast. The biggest thing is I got relieved at noon, and I was walking back the catwalk toward the bridge, and there was this dark plane. It was painted very dark gray, and I thought it was going to hit our mast. It was coming in that close, and I stopped, in the catwalk, and anyhow he was coming by, and he was going slow. He wasn't going that awful fast, and anyway, the co-pilot had his window open, and was smiling, and my gosh, he was that close. I could see how bright his teeth were, and so I put up my arm and I waved to him. Well, he waved back and then gave a big smile, and as the plane went by, it was the starboard wing facing me, and behind the starboard wing was a very large Star of David. So right there, they knew who we were. They knew there was an American ship because they could see the flag, and as low as he was, he could see the U.S.S. Liberty name and the stern, and also our code, AGTR-5, on the bow. And I wouldn't be surprised, as low as he was, that he couldn't read U.S.S. Liberty on our ball caps. Anyhow, that's very important because, they keep saying that, well, it was a misidentity and all this bull. They are all liars. They weren't there. I was there. These other people, that come along just to get their 15 minutes or whatever. I'm not after any kind of fame or anything like that. I just want to tell the truth because I'm so sick of the lies, 45 years of it. And this is my time, I guess, to do it and set the record straight as far as I'm concerned, because I tell the truth. And
well, I'm honored to have you on my show, Richard, and I think more people need to step up and speak to you and the rest of the survivors of the Liberty while you guys are still around and get your stories out, because what the government's waiting for, and let's be frankly honest, they're waiting for you guys to die so that your story dies with you. And I refuse to allow that to happen if I have something to say about it.
We know that. That's why I want to, I'm going to need help from somebody, hopefully with England, connections with England, to help me write my book, because there's no way I can cover this in 2 hours or anything like that. There's so many other side stories and everything else that are very important in support of everything. But anyhow, I'll continue on. I was walking back toward the bridge, and the plane went on, and I in my heart, I sort of had a sense of relief, because I thought, oh man, they're an ally, so they know we're here, because we could see on the horizon the smoke billowing up from the war going on, from the Egyptian side, at the Mediterranean. There's all kind of smoke coming up, but it was on the horizon because we were out in international waters. And I had experienced some dizziness when I was steering the ship, and Doc Kiefer just told me you have to get off watch to come on back to sick bay. He wanted to check my ears out. So I went back there, and he was checking me out, and on the 1MC, which is, just like an intercom, and they announced, stand clear of the motor whaleboat, we're going to test the engine. Well, that's the kind of thing they just do. And anyhow, Doc and I were there, and he was checking me out, and all of a sudden, and we heard this rat-tat-tat-tat-tat really loud. And the motor whaleboat was on the other side of the bulkhead of where sick bay is. And I looked at the doc. I said, the damn prop just flew off that motor whaleboat, Doc. And just at that time, well, they yelled, general quarters, this is not a drill. You're under attack. And that quick, I just got out and went up the ladder because my general quarter station was right above sick bay. It was an old helicopter pad. I always thought it was kind of dumb to have secondary con, and that's what they call it because there's a ship's wheel there, a compass there, and I was the telephone talker. I would be in communication with the bridge to take orders, and it was there in case the bridge got blown up. But we were out in the ocean now. If the bridge is out, you can bet we're not going to be there. But anyway, we survived one strafe, and I told Fred we got to get down now. We got to get off of here. And the first class told me that you don't go anywhere without the captain's orders. I said, you want to listen in my earpiece of the confusion that is going on the bridge right now? I said, I know our captain, and our captain would want us to do the best thing, and that would be to survive. And Fred and I jumped down. I had 35-foot of cord for my earphones, so I could still hear the bridge. And I was told later that first class that stayed up there, it was either the next strafe or the strafe after strafe, he was cut in half. And we were trapped back there. And naturally, we didn't have anything to defend ourselves with. I mean, there's a couple of 45s, they just took them out right away, and anybody that tried to man them on the bow. That's all we had. A couple of 45 caliber machine guns, and, just absolutely nothing compared to the firepower they had. And we got back there, and, it was really... it was a hard day. That's the only way I can tell you. The type of fear it puts in you, the word fear doesn't cover it. And Fred lost it a little bit more than me. I was stronger than him or anything like that. But he was going toward the rail, and I thought he was going to jump ship. I really did. So I grabbed him by the collar, and I threw him in the corner. And I was pretty strong at the time because I was working out a lot and in real good shape because I was a short timer as far as my active duty, and I was all set up. But I was supposed to report to Cypress Gardens, and they were going to give me a shot of being a professional water skier. And so, back then I was pretty strong. And I threw him in the corner, and then I came and as he was in the corner, I got on top of him, holding him down, and then I got up, and I would come out from the offset and look which way, angle the next jet was attacking. And, well, they were attacking from 10 to 20 degrees from the point of the bow, port and starboard. They would alternate, And anyway, I would look, and then I would, get a hold of Fred and, pull him or slide him over in the other corner and then get on top of him. And then, one time I remember I was frustrated because I got up and I was trying to see the jet, and I thought it was going to be on the port side, but the American flag was in the way, so it was blocking my view of seeing the jet. So, the American flag was still up at the time. I think they shot 2 of them down, is what I was told. I didn't see that. I was pretty busy. And But anyway, the flag was in my way, and then finally the jet appeared, boy, and I had to really move and move Fred and got on top of him. Did this about 7 times, and then I come out too soon one time. I mistimed it. I don't know if I was getting more nervous or what it was, but it's just an unbelievable overload on the body and brain at the same time. Because first you're on a ship, you're trapped on the water, and then you have nothing to defend yourself, and you have this kind of activity going on. Well, I come out, and the jet was at the apex dive of his attack run, and I don't care who don't believe this or not. That's tough beans for them, but it is life. I saw him, and he saw me, out there, and he went straight aft, and I went and got Fred, and I got him behind a motor that runs a blower for the laundry. And I screamed at him and explained to him real quick that he's going aft and he's going to come right up the middle and try to get us, and screamed that you stay here. And Fred did listen to me. He stayed there. And this pilot had to radio the other attacking jets because he was, breaking the pattern of attack. Because he'd end up running into him, basically. So, anyway, I looked around for some protection, and there was a ship's cleat, which wasn't very much. I made myself as small as I possibly could be, and I got in the fetal position. And evidently they did shoot down a flag shortly before this was all occurring with Fred and I. And the last thing I saw before I closed my eyes, I saw a holiday flag flying from the mast. And just in a hard situation like this, the mind is amazing to me. I couldn't help but be a little overcome by how beautiful the American flag looked against the blue sky. I mean, that really struck me. It's something that's always stayed with me. And then I closed my eyes and waited for hell's horror. And I didn't have to wait long, and it felt like a heavy surge of electricity going through my whole body, and I was blown up in the air about 4.5 to 5 feet. I hit the deck, come down. I got hit with 140 shrapnel wounds, and a lot of big holes. I mean, in my legs and that, and when I ended up in the mess deck, I could look through the big hole in my leg, and there was other holes, and I could actually look under the skin and see my kneecap. I mean, and also see where the muscle was just torn away by the shrapnel. And I looked down, and here I had a phosphorus fire where I had my large, where I had 2.5 foot of my colon blown out. And that was a very large wound in my abdomen. And it was like a coal fire, if you have a wood stove or something, and how the coals just sort of glow. Well, that's what a phosphorus fire does to the skin. At least it did to my skin. And I was so thankful that I was bleeding so much because I put the fire out with my own blood. But I tell you, there's nothing that stinks any worse than the human body burning. And I knew I had to get it out. And like I said, I was very thankful I was bleeding so bad. After that, Fred looked from behind the motor, and he saw that I was hit. And as I saved his life basically before, he ended up saving my life because he helped me get to sick bay, because I was basically a sitting duck, for the next strafe. I'd have been killed. So Fred got me into sick bay, and the doc got me up, and they helped get me up. A couple of the guys got me up the table, and I was just bleeding unbelievable. And he started, putting those scissor clamps and stuff and doing his best to stop all the bleeders and everything else, and he was working on me. And then he was getting to the point that he was swabbing out and trying to see the damage and everything and what he could do for me. in like a triage fashion, because maybe later on he could do a little bit more, once hopefully we were still around, that he could work on me down the mess decks, where we ended up eventually. But he was just about done, and then we took a rocket right through the ceiling, and a piece of shrapnel hit the doc in the stomach, and he never told anybody about it. He put a 4x4 on, and he put a life jacket on to put pressure against his wound, and I took a direct hit right in the stomach where he was just working, and I was just bleeding all over the place again, because it was just shooting up. It's not a very good sight to see when it's your. It's not a good sight to see anybody's body, but when it's you, it's pretty profound. Anyway, he stopped the major bleeding, and then he worked in a big cylinder of gauze to soak up, what I would be bleeding afterwards, So he asked me if am I okay to get off, them to get me off the table. I said, yeah, sure, Doc. So he lifted me off the table and put me on the floor. And this is how some things burn in your brain, and I'm sure it's from PTSD, but it just does. They had these big brown rolls of towels, paper towels type of thing, and the two guys are going to clean the table off to, help the next wounded shipmate. And when they did, they just took one hard sweep, and the blood just flew up on the bulkhead on the wall. And I was laying there, and I was looking at this, and I thought, my God, that's part of me. Now, it doesn't sound like much unless it's you.
No, that's got to be one of the most surreal things that you could have experienced up to that point in your life. And
so much blood. I was wondering how I was still around with that much blood loss.
And you were a young guy, right? You were 21.
I was 21 at the time. Yes.
So that had to be a super surreal experience for you. I mean,
yeah.
I'm at a loss. I'm sitting here listening to you, and it's just, and I've already talked to you off air before, and I'm just hearing it again. It's just making my jaw drop. We're gonna get cut off by the break, so stay right there, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go anywhere. When we come back in a few minutes, Richard's gonna pick up right where he left off. You do not want to miss the rest of it. 45 years ago, the U.S.S. Liberty was attacked, ladies and gentlemen, in an unprecedented fashion, and our government covered it up. And I'm going to get right back into it with Richard in just 1 second. I'm going to have him pick up right where he left off. But I want to do him a favor, and I want to throw a plug out there for him. Anybody out there that hears this broadcast live, archive, whatever, if you have the ability, if you're in the publishing industry, if you are in the video industry, film industry, whatever, I urge you to contact me. The email is contactdtrh@yahoo.com. That's contactdtrh@yahoo.com. And if you're interested in helping Richard get his story out, I told him I would, vet some of the people, and if you're real, I'll send you to, I'll pass your info along to him, and then he'll get in touch with you. He wants to get his story out into a book. So if anybody can help him, have somebody come and listen to him, record what he has to say, and then transcribe it into a book, that would be really awesome. So you can contact me, contact DTRH@yahoo.com, and hopefully we can help facilitate Richard's story getting into a book and getting out there for everybody in the world to see. All right, getting back into it, Richard, you were describing what was going on, and you and Doc had just gotten hit by shrapnel. So go ahead and pick it up from where you
after they wiped off the table and my blood hit the wall, that's one of those things that burns in your brain, and it just does. It changes you as a person. That kind of gruesome thing, because what your eyes see, your mind never forgets when it's bad enough. And I was laying on the deck, and Fred was with me. He stayed with me the whole time, man. I mean, you know, he just, you know, he just really took care of me until I left the ship, you know. Anyway, we were laying there. I mean, he was sitting there, and I was laying on the deck, and they got on the 1MC, and then they said, stand by for torpedo attack to the starboard side. And I said, Fred, get a life jacket and get it on me now. Well, he did, and he pulled the cord, and well, the CO2 filled it up, and boy, then I realized just how badly my lower back and, well, my back period and my shoulder, you know, how badly I was wounded in the backside of my body. That Dr. Flynn, Dr. Kiefer kept me alive so that Dr. Flynn could save me, and he was a doctor on the America. And he said that a piece of shrapnel went flying by my spinal cord. It just missed by 1/8 of an inch from severing my spinal cord. And then another piece just missed the kidney lobe. And anyway, I was very fortunate that if you got to get tore up, I was tore up the right way, I guess you'd say. But he got the life jacket on, and then all of a sudden, it was like a giant grabbed a hold of the ship and just sort of shook it, and then just sort of gave it a shove. And it would be like a kid's boat in a bathtub, and it just sort of rocked back and forth and sort of evened out. And we came to a stop at about, I'm guessing, anywhere from a 10 to 20 degree list. And with PTSD, I think it's a brain protector kind of thing, that it blocks out terrible things. But it's not a good thing. And I have been to Ed Cabaney, who is a specialist over in Tripler that worked with, well, over in Honolulu, and worked with me and with EMDR and developing the film. And that's basically what it is. These hard memories are film that's in your brain, and the best way to do the best you can with PTSD is develop as much of it and then look at it for what it is, because the unknown is what makes you do crazy things with PTSD. When you know all the story of what happened, then you can look at it and then work with the psychologists, who I have a wonderful one. I had a great one back in Pennsylvania, and I've been out here almost 19 years because I have less pain here because of the climate. Back there, I had loaded up in pain pills so much, my kidneys and my liver, I think, would have been shot. I don't think I'd have been around, because of, when I go back to visit, I got to load up in pain medication. But anyway, once we came to settle, then I said, they call abandoned ship, Fred, get us up to the life raft. We had the same life raft.
Richard, when the ship rocked like that, and you say it was pushed, that was so descriptive. Was that when the torpedo hit the side of the ship?
Yeah, that's when it hit. It hit, and I mean, it just moved that ship, and it blew a 40-foot hole in it. And I'll get to that part there, how lucky we were. Anyway, I told Fred to make sure that that we get our life raft, get me out of here. Well, this part of the film is the only part I could never get developed, because I went through several sessions, my wife was with me, and it was so powerful, this EMDR, that there was 2 times at least, it might have been 3, but I know of 2, that I would tell the story up to a certain point, and he said, okay, watch my fingers and close your eyes, and I'd pass out. My wife and the doctor had to catch me before I hit the floor. That's how powerful that is. And when I would come to, I would remember more. Amazing. I mean, I thought, I'm getting chills now just telling you this. But, oh, yeah, this happened, and I was making progress, and it was really worth passing out to find out more of what really happened with me. So anyway, they ended up calling abandoned ship, And this part of the film, like I said, is complete blank. I ended up that I got through 2 watertight doors, and I must have hopped because my right hand was no good to grip anything, and my right leg was useless. And I hopped, I think it's 18 or 20 inches, something like that, a rise on these watertight doors that you got to hop over or step over. Well, I must have hopped over 2 of those. I got outside. I was by myself. Fred wasn't around. I don't remember where he went, what happened. That was all blank. So I knew where my life raft was, and it was on the starboard side, and I started pulling myself forward. But when I hopped, I guess that gauze must have come out or whatever. I had to put my right elbow in that large hole in my abdomen so my intestines wouldn't fall out on the deck. So I'm pulling myself with my left arm, and like I said, I was good and strong, and I was glad of it, but my shoe was sliding on human blood. That when you wash down a ship, it has sort of like a little rain spout, but it's not. It's just made lower, and that it directs it to drain out the drains to the side of the ship. Well, that's where I was. My foot was, because I could guide it in that little channel, but the lubricant was human blood draining. That's how badly it's just unreal. I don't know how to describe the view, but I was pulling and pulling, and then this is where different times, like a dream, it slows down, and you're going as fast and as hard as you possibly can. And the torpedo gunboat was trying to get me, and I was trying to get up, to my life raft to get out of his line of fire. And each time, the armor-piercing cannon fire hit, it sounded like a ping pong. What do you call it? A pinball machine. Those big ball bearings. It sounded like they were hitting the bulkhead like that, only with the firepower of a gun. That's how loud it was. And I heard it coming closer and closer to me, and I was pulling as hard as I could, and I couldn't, move my elbow because I would have lost my innards. But I kept pulling and pulling, and then it was really getting close, and then I looked out because I got to the point there was a large support for the bridge, and I went behind that, and I think that must have helped me out, and he must have went by or whatever. But I got over to my life raft. I looked up, and it was on fire. Well, you go through general quarters and different types of general quarter drills. Being under attack, or for whatever reason, if a boiler would blow and it would start sinking, well, then you have abandoned ship drills. Well, you go through that so many times, and our captain, well, man, we were just aggravated with our captain. He drilled us so much, but my God, bless his heart, he's the reason I'm talking to you, because we drilled so much you just automatically did it without any thought. And I got there, and I ran out of tape because I was supposed to be getting in my life raft. And I'm standing on one leg and holding on with my left arm, and I could sense somebody beside me. I didn't look over and see him because I was looking up my life raft, and I guess he was, assigned to that same life raft. And I could sense incoming. I just could feel it almost. And all of a sudden, I got splattered like crazy, and I thought, oh, my God. I didn't know if I was hit again because I was in such pain that I didn't know if I could take any more pain, that it might not even show up if I was hit. Well, I sort of got off balance, and I hopped, with my foot. And when I come down, I look down, and I'm standing on the fleshy calf of the guy that was standing next to me and his foot. And that's all that was left of him. He just completely exploded. He was gone. One minute he's standing beside me, the next minute all that's there is the calf and the ankle and foot. And then I heard some yelling from a gear locker yelling Weaver, real loud and everything. Well, I couldn't go backwards or anything, so one guy, I still don't know to this day, because my God, I'd love to give him a hug. He got a hold of me and got me under the armpits and pulled me in the gear locker. He ripped off his shirt and stuffed it in that big hole in my stomach. And then they got me on a stretcher and put me in the companionway with other wounded, because that was the center of the ship, even though it was on deck. With more protection there. And we were all praying in there. And no, just give me a second here.
Yeah, take your time, Richard. It's okay.
To me, it almost sounded like some kind of maybe Oriental or some kind of a foreign chant, because it was like, and I'm probably not going to do it justice, but it was like, over and over. But we were all praying in English, There wasn't any kind of a chant. It's just that our different voices resonated that sound in that companionway, and I will never, ever forget that sound. And anyway, then the way you understand, the SOS got it out, and then they come over, and they stopped firing, but first they went back and they went and got boarding parties on these torpedo gunboats, and they were going to board us and kill everybody aboard. But in the meantime, one of my shipmates risked his life, and one of the antennas that wasn't hot, that they were having trouble with, he jerry-rigged it and got the SOS out, and then once that happened, well, that foiled it, sort of. They went to apologize, and the captain just told them to go to hell. And what is amazing, and I got to share this with you because this is the way it is, the planes were unmarked. There was no markings at all on the planes. They were camouflaged, and Johnson called back planes from the U.S.S. Saratoga. The captain of Saratoga came to one of our reunions, and he knew I was one of the worst ones wounded that lived. And he was sobbing at the table, just him and I talking, and apologizing so much that he had all this firepower. And he said, I couldn't do anything for you. And
Johnson.
I told him it's okay. I said, Johnson gave his direct order to McNamara to call the planes back and let us sit there 2 hours under attack. That's as long as the Pearl Harbor attack, if anybody wants to think about it. It's a long time when you don't have a gun. And anyway, they called the jets back, and what had happened is they had French built torpedoes, and they weren't very accurate. They came very close to hitting us, but they weren't very accurate. And this is something I said earlier, but my shipmates don't know, because I hired a special investigator because my DD-214 never said I was on the U.S.S. Liberty. My duty stations that they list by date, where I was, boot camp of Chickamauga, my first ship, well, from April to June the 9th, that time didn't exist in my life, because they just put U.S.S. America. They never put Liberty. They did everything they could possibly do to disprove that I was aboard that ship. And where was I at?
Well, that's
they
part
ran
of
out. They ran out of torpedoes. I got to get this out while it just come to me.
Yeah, go ahead.
They ran out of torpedoes, and the U.S.S. Amberjack, a submarine, was 1 mile off of our starboard bow the whole time. And this is hearsay, because I can, there's no really legitimate proof, but I was told that they were filming the whole attack through the periscope. And I hired this investigator to get my record straightened out, because I want to be buried in Arlington near my captain. And they told my wife, because she was handling that paperwork, that well, don't matter how many pictures you got of you on the ship on a stretcher or anything. That means nothing. You got to have it in print. Well, I hired him, and he started, there's a left and a right side of your records, and the right side they'll share with you, but the left they won't. Well, he had a good way with people, and they helped him out, and here, he got information, and I got the transfer papers from Larry Soper at a reunion, so that was proof that I was on the Liberty, and so anyway, they were parked there, and this investigator somehow got a hold of somebody that knew somebody that there was two guys that were crewmen on the U.S.S. Amberjack. And one guy was in charge of arming the torpedoes. And the other guy was in charge of firing the torpedoes from the bridge on the captain's command. And he tried to talk him into getting on tape, and then he said, oh, no, well, about a year and a half later, I got a call from the investigator, and what did I just say?
You were talking about.
I got a call from the investigator, and these two guys, I guess, got a bad case of PTSD because they wanted to put it on tape because they said that you can't deal with it anymore. It's a truth that needs told, and we just can't keep it to ourselves anymore. And this is what they told the investigator on tape. The one guy said, "Well, I'm in charge of arming them, and I got an order to arm, and I'll just say number 3 or torpedo because I don't know what number they used." So he armed the torpedo, and he's looking around at the other guys. My God, what are we arming a torpedo for? And anyhow, the other guy at the bridge, the captain gives a direct order, and there's no way he could give that order without the president's authorization through McNamara, and it might have been directly from him. I don't know. But that is the torpedo that hit the Liberty. The United States submarine torpedo hit the Liberty, and we lucked out so much because it hit the superstructure of the skeleton of the ship exactly in the middle of an I-beam, right at its strongest point.
So when the Israelis, Richard, wait, this is actually like mind-blowing news because this is part of the Liberty story that not many people even have ever heard before.
Even my shipmates don't know.
This is incredible. So what you're saying is the Amberjack is actually the one that fired the torpedo that hit the Liberty.
Yeah, they were out. They fired all their French torpedoes and they missed. Well, Johnson wanted, he told
he wanted the ship. What's he quoted as saying? I want the ship to go to the bottom of the sea or whatever.
Yeah, he said that in your Oval Office to one of the Admiral, the Joint Chief of Staff, and I forget his name because my mind is sort of racing right now, a little emotional.
Don't worry, no problem.
But anyhow, that he always said it was deliberate because what Johnson said, I want that ship on the bottom and every sailor killed. And that's what he said in the Oval Office. So, like I said, it hit that I-beam exactly square, and it made most of the explosion go out, and made the 40-foot hole. If that would have been 1 inch to the right or 1 inch to the left of where it hit, we'd have been cut in half, and we'd have been in the bottom in minutes. So to me, that's an out-of-control president, to me. That, this idea of no man left behind, I agree with that 100%. A pilot goes down on an aircraft carrier, and they search thousands of square miles to try to recover that guy. You're damn right they should. But here's a president that's willing to sacrifice the whole crew for political reasons. And we put our hand up in good faith.
Johnson was a disgusting human being, Richard. I mean,
yeah, don't let him off so easy. He's willing to kill a whole crew. Well, let's face it. Let's think how he got in office. Okay, I'm not going to say a whole lot about that, but
no, I think you summed it up well with that. I'm gonna make you hang on right there because we got the top of the hour break coming up. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. Richard and I will be back in a few minutes with hour number 2. You don't want to go anywhere because he's going to get further in depth into his story. There's still more to it yet. I know it's hard to believe, but there's more to it, so stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on tonight's edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. Today is June 8th, 2012. It is the 45th anniversary of the attack on the U.S.S. Liberty. And I would not be doing my job and upholding my oath to the Constitution if I did not bring this heinous atrocity to your attention and urge you to help seek justice for the men of the U.S.S. Liberty. And ladies and gentlemen, like I said, first hour, if anybody out there can help Richard get his story out, you want to transcribe it, help him get it into a book format is what he's looking for. You can email me at contactdtrh@yahoo.com. Again, that's contactdtrh@yahoo.com. I'm not getting any money or anything like that. I'm just doing Richard a favor and vetting, the serious people from the trolls. And then I will get you in contact with him if you really can help him out. And that would just be awesome. So, Richard, getting back into it, you were talking about the Amberjack. Now, this totally blew my mind. I had known a little bit about the Amberjack, and I knew that it was there, and I had heard that it was taking pictures. But I had never heard that they had fired the torpedo that hit you guys. It is interesting, though, because that correlates with what the Israelis said, because the Israelis said that the torpedoes missed. And nobody ever bought it. They always said, well, one of them hit. They got torpedoed because there was evidence of the torpedo explosion. Obviously, you guys got torpedoed, but the Israelis always contested that the torpedoes missed.
Well, that was one time they were telling the truth, because when this is sort of getting ahead of the story, but yet it needs told right now. When the U.S.S. Liberty got to Malta, they cordoned it all off and would not let any reporters. They all had to stay on shore. They were not allowed anywhere near the Liberty, and that's when they threatened the crew, because I think they were fearful that if anybody had a telescopic lens or something, if they'd have saw a fragment of the torpedo that had been left and had USA on, you imagine what that would have done? This is my point. That's why they made it hushed up, and boy, they got that damn thing welded up as quick as they could to hide the evidence, if nothing else. But they had divers in there, looking, and you can bet they threatened all those. I mean, that's the way they work. But anyway, the idea that these men put this on tape, and they felt much better if they did. It is just mind-blowing, yes, that an American ship will fire another American ship, but they're ordered to. I don't blame the captain of the Amberjack, at all. I mean, it's really a sick president. I mean, it really, not in his right mind or something going on. But anyway, to get back to part of the story, when we were praying in the corridor, the whole 17 hours that we had to wait, I would not close my eyes, because I felt if I closed my eyes, I opened the door to die. And I mean, I was whipped naturally, and then naturally hurting very badly. And I stayed awake the whole time until I was evacuated to the U.S.S. America, and I didn't go out until they put me under, the first operation was an 8-hour operation, and that's when I went out, and then I slipped into a coma. But anyway, it just
we were talking about
what I want to share with you is the Israelis said it was an accident or something like that. Well, the way you take a ship out, okay, is you send jets with armor-piercing rockets and cannon fire to make holes in the ship. Any holes anywhere.
This is what I was actually going to ask you. You had brought this up during the break. How many holes were in the ship?
There was 821 holes in the holes in the metal. Now, there was a lot of sort of marks that, didn't make it through, but these were actual holes in the ship. And after that, then you bring out, after they empty out, you bring out, bam, the napalm was there. Well, you got the holes there, you drop the gel gasoline inside, you burn the ship within. And then you have the torpedo gunboats. Now, if you're trying to tell me this is an accident, that takes a lot of coordination to bring an attack like that on. Think about it. Just think about the plan they had to have that all happen. And what was really bad and really pissed Johnson off is I commend the damage control guys, the firefighters, everybody on the crew for keeping us afloat, because it foiled Johnson and Diane's plan to sink that ship and kill every sailor, because he even went to the length of having the amberjack hit us with a torpedo, and that didn't even work. And I'll tell you, if there's ever a ship that can exemplify the saying of "don't give up the ship," it's the U.S.S. Liberty, because I'm telling you, they were under fire and they were fighting fires, and there were bullet holes going into the fire hoses, and they just go to get another hose, and it's just unbelievable what they were doing. A lot of these guys weren't wounded, but they all were wounded mentally with PTSD, every one of them, because none of us. I mean, the divorce rate for the U.S.S. Liberty was something like 68%. Or even higher than that. At one time, it was 68. That was before I got divorced. Anyway, it just the level of PTSD, and the idea of the level that the kind of men that were on the Liberty, I want to thank them from the bottom of my heart, because that's why I am here. Is because not only the great guidance of our captain, but all these other guys that went out there in harm's way to keep the ship afloat and putting mattresses up, and big holes in the side of the ship and stuff, so we didn't sink. I mean, it's just surreal, how they pulled it off. And this must have made Johnson so aggravated that he went to that extreme. And that didn't work. And that is why, I say, that I got to look here.
Well, let me ask you this. Is it true that they eventually had to stop firing on you guys, right? Because there was a Russian ship that happened upon the scene eventually.
What happened is we got that friend of mine, Terry, he risked his life and Jerry rigged an aerial that was not hot. They sent heat-seeking missiles, the first thing, to take out all our communications, and then jammed. They were jamming our communications, but he got an SOS out, and that's what saved, basically. So many things saved the ship, basically, but that was the biggie of him getting that out, and once that was out and got around, well, then other countries heard it, and what do you do now, kind of thing. Well, they came back, and they were all loaded up, ready to kill everybody on board. They were just combat soldiers, just ready to hit the ground and come in and kill everybody that was aboard the ship.
Didn't they roll in with helicopter gunships too? There was a fourth wave that not many people even know about. That's
what they did, but then they must have got a radio message to stand off, because I guess too many countries or people or whatever knew what was happening, and if they did that, then they'd have been in between a rock and a hard place. So they called that off, and the fact is, the one torpedo gunboat come over and asked, need any assistance, and that's when the captain told them to go to hell. But anyway, I just gotta look, because I gotta put reminders down here so I don't get to. Sometimes with PTSD, you talk in circles.
Yeah, no, you're doing fine.
But anyhow, I got I got to the point that they evacuated me, and then I slipped in a coma. And then when you're in a coma, I don't know how it would be for anybody else. I was on the other side. I was in a tube, and I know you hear these life after death kind of things, but there was nobody. It was just a dot, a dash, a dot, a dash, a dot. And to me, that was my pure spirit within me that was in this tube, and it was sort of a liquid, almost gel, clear tube, and there was a light at like where my feet would be, at pretty far away from me, and it was dark behind me. And I wanted to go in the light so much, but I never felt so much love. I mean, I could actually, my spirit could actually feel the love of God. And I'm not preaching here. I'm telling you just what happened. And it felt so good, and I just wanted to go into the light so bad. But I ended up coming back out, and then I was blinking my eyes. It was, like I said, it was like my head was in a milk bottle with milk. And the more I blinked, the clearer it got and everything. And they had corpsman with me 24 hours a day. And boy, as soon as I woke up, he yelled, "Weaver's awake, Weaver's awake." Well, shoot, I had all kind of doctors and nurses around me. And I joked when I looked at my body, because I had this big old colostomy. It was as big as my fist sticking out my side. I had, they didn't have any colostomy bags or anything like that. So any movement or anything just went all over my chest, and it was just awful to even talk about. And I apologize if anybody's having supper, okay? Anyway, I looked down, and I saw all these tubes, and I told Dr. Flynn, I said, "My God, I look like a 56 fuel-injected Chevy here." Well, they laughed, and then I started laughing. Oh, my God, it hurt so bad, so I couldn't laugh anymore. And anyway, then I got to the point that they were giving me blood, and then they did another operation, and then I went to Crete, and they had done one there, and then I got to move to Naples, and they did one or two operations there. Then I got to Philadelphia Naval Hospital, and when I was in the Philadelphia Naval Hospital, I got a couple operations, and then I was 2 days out of intensive care, and still fighting for my life. I wasn't out of the woods by any means because of infections and everything else that hit me. And anyway, I was in, intensive care, and they just moved me up to the 6th floor, where my bunk was. And then corpsman come over and said, "There's an admiral downstairs that wants to talk to you." And my first reaction was, "What the hell did I do?" And anyhow, not as clear because I was medicated, okay? Because naturally there was a lot of pain involved. But anyhow, they used bottles back in instead of bags, and they were clanging around, and it took 3 people, because one on each side to guide the bottles, and then somebody to push me in a wheelchair. And buddy, when you have your abdomen opened up, and then you have to, laying down is bad enough, that's fine. But boy, when you have to sit up, I mean, the pain is just unbelievable. Well, they pushed me down and went down the elevator, and inside the lobby, there was a room, about a 10-foot by 10-foot room, that they pushed me in and turned the wheelchair around, and then and then they left, and then in came this admiral, and a 3-star admiral, Isaac Kidd, and he came in there, and boy, the first thing when I saw all that brass, in the wheelchair, even I just automatically wanted to snap the attention, just automatic from being in the service, and he closed the door, and then he said, no, he said first, he said, "Are you Richard Larry Weaver?" I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Okay," and he turned and shut the door, and he deadbolted it. And I got concerned because I didn't know what he was going to do. And he said, "Well, Richard," and he started taking the stars off. He said, "Well, I got my stars off. He said, I'm just a man just like you. Now you tell me what you saw, on that day, and just talking man to man. And I did. I talked, man to man. I felt pretty comfortable with that. And I told him about being the best eyewitness account because I was, so far aft on the ship that I could see much better because I had a longer range of vision, than anybody else, on the ship. Anyway, he put his stars back on, and the tone of his voice, I was horrified during the attack, but the tone of his voice, it takes a lot to scare me. But I was scared because he just said, if you tell anybody anything about this, wife, mother, father, anybody, said, you're going to be put in prison and we're going to lose the key. I'm 21 years old and I'm fighting for my life, serving my country, and an admiral takes the time out of his day to come down and see a seaman, a boatswain mate, and threaten him. It must have been, I must have been pretty damn important or something, or it's what you said before, that what I saw was it. And believe me, when I told him that was the start of my troubles, because that's what my DD-214 never showed that I was on the U.S.S. Liberty. They give me a regular separation, not a medical discharge or anything like that. They never told me about the VA or disability retirement. And on my DD-214, where it had VA, I didn't know what the VA was. They had double X's in there. That was X'd out. Where it had medals, they had service medal, like anybody would get, at your boot camp. You get that ribbon. But they didn't have
the National Defense Ribbon.
Right, and they didn't have about the Purple Heart or anything like that. And then, like I said about the duty station, it didn't, Liberty just was not mentioned in any of my records anywhere. And there must have been something going on because they said I had a physical at the Navy Yard in Philadelphia, and I was never there in my life. I went over to get mustered out. The fact is, I had to extend, I think it was 19 days, because the hospital wouldn't release me because my wounds weren't healed good enough yet to be separated. And so I had to sign a paper on that, too. The fact is, I just found it today. And anyway, they had a place to sleep upstairs, and at 8 o'clock in the morning, I was down there first thing. And they, went on, and guys come in, and an hour and a half. Well, they were in and out, and paperwork, they were gone. And it got 2:30, 2:45, and I'm up there. I said, man, what's going on? What? These guys are coming in here right and left, and you're bypassing me. What's happening? Well, they're working on yours just a minute. And somehow, I guess it got to somebody, maybe Isaac Kidd or whoever. Somebody made a decision that, no, we're not mentioning Liberty on any of his paperwork or something. Because something had to be, handled in such a way. Because, they put the physical, they said I was ready for duty. I had papers from the hospital telling of my disabilities, that, the nerve damage that I had, and I have over 60 pieces of shrapnel in me yet today. And, they just went, the doctor went over everything, so it showed my disabilities, but then they fudged up this report that physical that I went to the Navy Yard. I'd never been there, saying I was ready for duty. So I went home. 2 weeks, I go to the Reserve Center because you're supposed to report in 2 weeks. And Commander Doherty, nice guy, he was in charge of the Reserve Center because I went immediate active duty. And because I wanted to get that done. And this is sort of backtracking, but this tells you a little bit more about Larry Weaver, I think. That my dad served in the Battle of New Britain, on his boots on the ground, and the Battle of New Guinea. And they were he saw some pretty bad stuff. And and he had real bad PTSD, and you just didn't get a smack, you got the belt, that kind of thing, and it wasn't his fault. They never give him any treatment or anything like that. And I asked my mom when I was in 4th grade, I said, was Dad any different, when you first got married? Because he tried to join the service like 4 times, and each time they turned him down because there was something wrong with his ankle and his foot and all this. And he kept trying to get the service time in before he married my mom. And they went and said, look, go home, marry that woman, you have your kid, and all. So he did. And then they called him up after that. And then he was over New Britain, New Guinea. Anyway, after my mom told me about this, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was in 4th grade, and we always said the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, the first thing before we, started our schoolwork. And man, I had tears coming down my eyes. And I made a promise to myself right then and there that I kept, that my dad put his life on the line to protect my freedom. That before I get married, that I am going to serve my country first and then get married and have my kids. Because my dad did that for me, then I am going to do that for my kids. And that's, that has to do with the overall story in a lot of ways, because that's why I enlisted instead of...
It's important to know your motivation. Look, not only is it important to know about the Liberty, Richard, but it is important for the listeners to understand your motivation and kind of, the least I could do is afford you the time to let the listeners get to know you a little bit. And hopefully, again, somebody will pick up the mantle and help you write your book, because I think your son's correct. You really need to get your story in a book, because, I mean, I honestly think not, and ladies and gentlemen, this isn't Richard trying to make money, obviously. He just wants to get the truth out. And I honestly think this would be, it would beat any of these fictional crap books, written by Tom Clancy or anything like that. I think it would be a page turner.
Well, one thing I gotta tell you, that my biggest wound that I have is not the United States of America.
You know what, Richard? Hang on, because we're gonna get cut off by the break. I'll let you pick up right there when we get back. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. Final break of tonight's show coming up. Don't go anywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. And I got to tell you, it's been a rough hour and a half so far listening to Richard's story, but we owe him and the other men of the Liberty at least that. At the very least. And I mean at the very, very least. You owe them at least to listen to their story. What should be done is a whole hell of a lot more. And honestly, you can tell through what Richard's been through with his VA experience, which we're going to get into, and how, like the Admiral coming in and, pulling off their stars. Let me tell you something. As a veteran myself and as a sailor, if an Admiral comes in and sits and talks to you and pulls his stars off and says, we're going to talk man to man, that's crap. Okay, what he's doing is he's, quote unquote, getting your tail off the record because he doesn't have his stars on, and then he pins them back on and tells you what you're gonna do. And that's what they did to Richard and the other survivors of the Liberty. They split you guys up so that you guys couldn't talk amongst each other. Scattered you to the four winds of the Navy, and then do things like they did with your medical records and your DD-214 and everything else, which, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't understand, if they screw with your DD-214, it doesn't matter if you have video footage of, Richard could have 8mm footage and pictures of himself on the Liberty dancing around avoiding bullets, and the VA will say, if it's not in black and white, it didn't happen. And that's just the way they are. So it's that easy to screw people over, and that's one of the ways that they intimidate veterans that experience stuff like this. And I've witnessed it firsthand, and it disgusts me, and it pisses me off. You know that. I do shows on Veterans Affairs all the time, and that's why it's an honor to be able to have Richard come on and tell his story. Now, Richard, getting back into it, this...
Okay, after I got threatened by a 3-star Admiral...
What was his name again?
Isaac Kidd.
Admiral Isaac Kidd. Okay, go on.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure.
He was a 2-star Admiral, and he hit the mainland, and I guess Johnson gave him another star for covering stuff up. That's anything I can figure. Anyway, I want to get to this, that after I had conflicting records, basically. First, it's an outright lie about the physical at the Navy Yard, because that never happened. But I had my medical records, and then I reported it to Doc Doherty, my commander at the reserve center, to fulfill my reserve time, because I went immediate active duty. And then I got sidetracked telling you about 4th grade. Well, anyway, the jump ahead and back at the same time, because related, Admiral Starring, who's was a Judge Advocate General, retired. I had lunch with at 2005, I think it was, and we were by ourselves at the table. A couple guys were eating with us, but then he said, "Richard, how are you making out?" I said, "Well, I'm just sort of doing day to day. Is about all I can say. The best I can. I mean, they're making it tough in a lot of ways." And he said, "Well, you're getting your disability retirement, aren't you?" I said, "Well, what's that?" And right away, that's when the investigation started, because I wanted to be buried, near the captain, and you have to have the paperwork, And anyhow, the investigator started to investigate about this, because when I got to Doherty, he told me, he said, "Richard," he said, you have too many disabilities, that you cannot fulfill your reserve time. Just go home and wait on your discharge. No paperwork, nothing." And at that time, I was still in sort of the race mind, military mind of the idea that, yes, sir, that's it, because he's brass. And that was it. But the thing is, Admiral Starry told me, Doherty should have told you immediately, gave you a form for disability retirement, because the way Starring told me, he said disability retirement is for those that are wounded or hurt while serving in the Navy or Army or whatever. He said that are hurt that bad that they do not have an option to make the Navy or the Army, whatever service, a career. It's taken away because of you serving the Navy. And that disability retirement is automatic until the VA is over. And then they stopped it for a while. And in 2001 or 2003, they started it up again, because they found out through the way the laws were written that the guys that got disability retirement should have been getting their whole time, because that was a complete separate entity than the VA. But with the VA, I didn't know anything about it, and my dad helped me get a job, and then the boss asked me how the VAs treat me. And I said, "What's the VA?" Well, he gave me a dime, told me to call and make it real quick. I got a hold of my congressman, and he was livid. He was so pissed off. He said, I'll call you back in a few minutes. And I got an evaluation, make it real quick here because we're running out of time. And I was in and out in 15 minutes. They never took an x-ray. They didn't even take my blood pressure. All the doctor did was asked about the Liberty. And they gave a very low percent. I should have been 100% immediately, well, it should have been 100% permanent, because that's a little different than 100%. But anyway, it took me 29 years of appeals to get a fair hearing before they would admit that my wounds were permanent. Well, if they were permanent, and I think that was 1996, They were permanent in 1996. They sure in hell were permanent in 1967. And I said to him, I said, well, how far back do you go? He said, well, to your last appeal. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, let me look. He said, well, it's a year and a half. I said, wait a minute. That appeal was an appeal on an appeal the whole way back. He said, well, that's the way our system is. We go back to the last appeal. I said, you know, your system sucks. I said, if I'd been in a car wreck in 1967 and it would have been in court all this time and they were found liable, they would have had to pay damages for the whole time. And that's just civilians. And you get in the military, and that's how they take care of you. I was so upset with that whole process because it took a lot out of me to keep appealing. And I was evaluated by some that didn't even speak English. One guy just grabbed a hold of my file, which is a thick file, and he did it like a deck of cards, you know, and then he asked me a question I couldn't understand. He said, you know, do you have any bronchial systems? And I said, yeah, I told him, you know, yeah, I got bronchial systems. I didn't know what he was talking about. And he banged his fist on the table. Man, I jumped back because, you know, I was ready to nail him. And he said it real slow. He said, I asked you if you had any brothers and sisters. That's how badly he talked English. Now, you know, I don't know a foreign language, but I'm not over there evaluating foreign people either. And I just got out of there before I hit him. And I told the secretary, I said, I'm leaving. I don't care what you do with evaluation. And I said, I just had to get out of there before I hurt him.
Well, that's disgusting. That's no way to treat a veteran, first of all.
Well,
and somebody with PTSD should not be treated that way. And that the guy, quote unquote, as a doctor, should have known better. And he ought to. You see, that problem is sometimes they use registered nurses who should know better as well. And sometimes they use people that have no medical background at all to do these evaluations. Because I know exactly what you're talking about. It's the compensation and pension evaluation.
I gotta share this with you. The receptionist said, "Don't worry about it, Mr. Weaver. We had the cops in here 3 times last week. 3 veterans beat the hell out of him." So I felt a little better. I don't know why, but I did. Anyway,
you think he would have learned his lesson after getting his ass handed to him by 3 different guys?
Yeah, you thought, you know. I mean, but then, you know, some people, you know, I don't know. I don't think they think. Okay, something I want to hit on here is, you know, the idea of me being threatened and the crew being threatened, you know, also. They weren't all, you know, they weren't individually. It was more of a group because of being in Malta, and they rounded them all up, you know, and threatened them. But the captain told me, we got real close, and he told me at one reunion, "There's something I want you to tell the crew at the right time." And he
this
told
is
me,
Captain McGonigal you're talking about, the captain.
Yeah, Captain McGonigal, you know, captain of the Liberty. And I said, "Well, anything, sir. I'd be glad to do anything for you." So I wrote it down for word, and he had passed away, 99. And the next reunion I went to, I asked for some time to speak at the banquet, and I said, "I got something here. I got to tell you." And I was told by the captain that I would know the right time. And in his passing, I don't think he would have wanted me to tell him that while he was still alive. But he said, you know, he is, you know, I'll try to keep it. He said he is so sorry that he had to lie and to say what he had to say, which he knew was untrue, because, you know, he was there too. And hell, that must have hurt the whole crew. And then he told me, just tell the crew that I was the very first one to be threatened. And I really had a hard time, and the crew had a hard time hearing that. And I thought, my God, what is going on? You know, with with our nation. You know, the people you look up to, they get threatened, and you know, they lie, you know, not because they want to. It's because they're threatened. And I got to tell you another thing. This special investigator, he had 3 cell phones in his hand. My phones were tapped ever since 2005 when they started this up. He had 2 of them, you know, that just like fried, broke down when we were talking. Then he got a BlackBerry when he first come out. And I knew they were tapped because I used to joke and saying about, well, because you could hear the clicking going on the tap. And it'd be the weekend. I said, boy, well, I won't say the words. I said, you poor buggers, you. I said, you're sitting around, and all you got to do is wonder what the Siemens are going to say again. Holy mackerel. I said, I hope you're getting time and a half for this stuff, you know, and I just had fun with the idea. Well, anyhow, I was talking to the investigator out of Virginia, and he was talking to me, and we were getting into some heavy stuff. And they fried the phone in his hand. It actually burnt his hand. Now, what kind of control is that by the government with a cell phone? And this is back when the BlackBerries first came out. He said it actually made a burn mark in his palm. And because, you know, I lost connection, I thought, well, what the hell happened to him? They must have cut him off or something. Well, he went down the mountain and called me from a payphone and told me what happened. He said, man, I got to go in here and get something for this burn. They burnt the phone in his hand. I never knew they had the capacity to do something like that. Anyhow, I got to get through this quick. Okay, this is about Congress. There were men on the Liberty. I mean, real men. You know, you think of Macho Man and how they look, and you know, gorgeous. These guys were men, and what they did under severe duress. And you know, the way Americans work, you know, they get paid for what they know, basically, and their job performance. Well, that said, in my opinion, is Congress taking money under false pretenses? Because there are some that are educated in there, but they don't show any job performance. So that's taking money under false pretenses because they never get anything done. Before the Liberty was hit, and Israel started to take over Congress because they knew if they could kill Americans and get away with it, and the government wasn't going to do anything to them, they knew they had us by you know what. And
I agree.
Ever since then, that was a turning point in our history.
I was about to say the same thing. That was an exact turning point, because you brought up a great point that it's important to point out while we have a few minutes here, that Israel realized that after that day, they could attack an American ship, kill American sailors and Marines, and the American government would do nothing about it. They would cow down and bow down at the feet of Almighty Israel and would not do anything about it. And it's disgusting. If Johnson were alive, I would call for him to hang from the swing from the nearest tree. Yeah. Along with McNamara and the rest of his whole cabinet and anybody else that was involved in covering it up. And so people know John McCain, Senator John McCain's father, was an admiral. He was involved in not only sending the Liberty to where they got attacked, but he was also involved in the cover-up. It's disgusting, it's reprehensible, and these people are all dirtbags, okay?
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I would have put this out, the idea, you know, no man left behind. I don't know if I hit on that, but I truly believe in that, because if a pilot goes down, you know, from an aircraft carrier, they'll look, you know, thousands of square miles, and they should, for days, sometimes even weeks, to try to recover that pilot. But here's a whole ship's company that had a death sentence handed by our President of the United States. That's simple. Now, what does that say in the minds of a 21-year-old serving his country, and all the other guys are on Liberty, doing their best to serve our country, and yet they're pushing this no man left behind kind of thing. And the other thing I wanted to make a point of is about Congress, and this is kind of cute because my son helped me with this. He said, Dad, you know, you say the word Congress and break it down, and you say con. It's a con, okay? They're conning the people. And then gris. But if you put the word prog with gris, that's progress. You're heading forward. And you think of what Congress actually does between their breaks, their vacation, and everything else, and it's not too much gets done besides their little arguments. I mean, nothing really gets done. They just are play fighting in there. And that wasn't that way before the Liberty. They actually did get things done in there. And right now, and I hope
you would be referring to AIPAC, the Israeli lobby, getting their hands involved in Congress.
Well, the green light was the Liberty. I'm sad to say, you know, I mean, I'm not a part of that, and I'm proud to have been a crewman aboard the Liberty. But the end result of that is, yeah, they knew they could do what they wanted, and they do. They kill at will. Just that simple. It seems like, and you know, my heart goes out to the idea. You know, I don't have anything against any Jewish person, but my God, you know, the Holocaust, and sometimes I've seen pictures and stuff, and it's so disgusting, and my heart really bleeds for these people. But my God, you don't go out on a killing rage to try to kill as many people to even the number. And I can't help, my mind drifts that way sometimes. Not with the people with the shops, not, you know, this like, you know, little America. That's all the little people that make everything work. You know, that's America. The boys inside the Beltway, you know, and I've always said this, are the biggest legalized mafia operating in the world. They close the doors and they decide behind closed doors, and man, they can pad their pockets, do whatever they want, and get it done, put laws in, and then let them sit there, and then you say, well, this law's been on the book for years. Never have a vote on it, and they do it because they can. And we don't know about it, and we can't know about it because they hide behind different slogans. And right now, it's Homeland Security. I mean, you or I could go to an airport, and really, if they had it in for you, if they say, hey, well, you got to get out of line here, you know, or just say a couple nasty words on the side, and you react to it, and if that agent says, hey, don't you give me a hard time, well, you know, hey, I need help over here. I mean, he could really make it dramatic. You could be in jail.
Well, you were, you know, we have a few minutes left. You were on the list. You had
I couldn't fly
back and forth to be able to actually have surgeries to stay alive and improve your living conditions and everything. And you had to prove who the hell you were, and you had to go through this hassle.
Yeah, I had to wait. They had to go behind the wall and then call somebody or whatever. Yeah, and I was on the blacklist. My wife actually did it, fill out all the paperwork and everything
harassment.
to get me off of it.
That's harassment.
God.
That's what harassment. That's harassment because of who you are.
Oh, well, I tell you one thing, you know, I ought to get another tattoo, you know, somewhere in my body that says Mr. Harassed, because that's what it's been for the last 45 years, and I'm not alone. Our whole ship's company is that way, because we've been harassed by being ignored. If you ignore somebody, that is the worst thing you can do. And the Navy doesn't want to recognize us as veterans, or even that this ship exists, and the government sure doesn't want to touch it, because they're afraid they're going to lose their jobs. I mean, they had, and I might be repeating myself, I apologize of them, but there's one woman and two men, congressmen, and woman, that stood up for the Liberty, and the very next election, millions of dollars came from Israel and went to their opponent and got him out of office. Gee, that's how it works.
Big surprise. Richard, we're out of time. I want to.
Let me just say one more thing real quick.
Go ahead.
I challenge President Obama to right this wrong. Let him stand up and be brave. He talks a good talk, and I'm impressed by him sometimes, actually. But let him right this terrible, bloody wrong. Government made, the United States Navy desert the U.S.S. Liberty.